It's estimated we're composed of approximately 30 to 40 trillion cells organized into tissues and organs. This semester we'll learn how this organization functions in a coordinated manner to maintain homeostasis, the dynamic stability of our internal environment essential for survival. Homeostasis requires constant monitoring and adjustment throughout the body. Without cell-to-cell communication, such coordination would be impossible. Individual cells would function in isolation, unable to mount integrated responses to keep us alive. Let's look at some of the basics of this communication. Cells communicate over varying distances and timescales through several modalities. Here, some cells are shown with triangles representing chemical messengers. Some chemical messengers function as an autocrine manner, acting on the cells that secrete it. Paracrine agents act on nearby cells, and hormones are released into the bloodstream and transported to distant targets. Cells also communicate through gap junctions. These are direct cytoplasmic connections between adjacent cells that enable the rapid transmission of ions and small signaling molecules. Finally, Juxtacrine communication involves direct physical contact in which membrane-bound ligands on one cell combine to receptors on another cell's surface. This creates highly localizing signals. This type of signaling is very important in our immune system. Taken together, these modalities enable rapid, local responses and coordinated systemic regulation, both of which are necessary for maintaining homeostasis. Now that we've seen the different ways cells can communicate, autocrine, paracrine, endocrine, gap junctions, and juxtacrine signaling, let's examine what happens inside the cell when the signal arrives. Signal transduction is the process by which cells receive and respond to signals. It's the molecular machinery that converts an extracellular message into a specific cellular response, enabling coordinated behaviors necessary for homeostasis. When a ligand binds to a receptor, it can produce different effects depending on its properties. Agonists are ligands that bind to a receptor and activate them, triggering the signal transduction cascade and producing a cellular response. Antagonists or blockers bind to a receptor but do not activate them. Instead, they prevent agonists from binding and block the response. Think of agonists as turning on the receptor, while antagonists occupy the receptor without turning it on, thereby preventing the natural agonist from doing so. Let's look at a few common signal transduction pathways. First, let's look at hydrophilic messengers. As we know, the barrier function of the hydrophobic core prevents entry of hydrophilic messengers. With that in mind, they typically bind to membrane-bound receptors. There are three general types of receptors. First, there are catalytic receptors. When bound by their ligand, these receptors activate an enzyme, often a kinase, that phosphorylates proteins, typically initiating a chain of reactions involving other proteins. Next, we have a channel-linked receptor. When a messenger binds to a transmembrane protein, it opens a channel that allows the movement of ions into or out of the cell, thereby eliciting a response. Finally, we have the G-protein linked receptors, which when bound create their own response. The G-protein receptor involves several different parts. Here we have at the top our channel-linked receptor, which was one of our major types of receptors. In this case, the ligand bound directly to the channel, opening the channel, allowing ions to move and bringing about a response. One mechanism a G-protein coupled receptor uses is to activate a channel protein. These G-protein coupled receptors, like channel-linked receptors, ultimately control ion channel activity, but they do so through fundamentally different mechanisms. As we saw, channel-linked receptors directly gate the channel upon opening. That's a one-step process. G-protein coupled receptors work indirectly. Ligand binding activates the receptor, which then activates the G-protein, which then modulates the ion channel. This eventually results in response, but notice that it is a multi-step cascade. Another mechanism that a G-protein linked receptor may use is to activate an amplifier enzyme. The binding of a single ligand activates an amplifier enzyme, which triggers a sequence of intracellular reactions that leads to widespread cellular changes through the creation of substances called second messengers. Many of these second messengers work through activating kinases, phosphorylating proteins, and subsequently bring about a response. One second messenger that I'll highlight is inositol triphosphate, or IP3. This works by interacting with the smooth endoplasmic reticulum and causing the release of intracellular calcium, which subsequently brings about a response. So I'll interject here before we go on to the lipophilic messengers to say that all of these mechanisms that we'll be discussing are signal transduction mechanisms that are meant to help with the maintenance of homeostasis. So with that in mind, all of these signal transduction pathways are going to need to have a way to have their signals terminated. Different ways that this may occur: some of the messengers that bind to extracellular receptors will be washed away with the plasma. There may also be enzymes present in the plasma that can degrade those messengers in the extracellular compartment. Once these messengers have activated kinases, there likely are enzymes inside the cell that also will terminate the activity of those kinases or dephosphorylate the proteins that were activated. When we think about the second messenger system, which is brought on by the G protein coupled receptors, there likely are enzymes within the cell that will break down those chemical messengers. So all of these signal transduction pathways will have some way to turn them off. That will hold true for our lipophilic messengers, which we'll talk about next. Now realize with lipophilic messengers, these are going to differ from hydrophilic messengers in that they can cross the cell membrane, and when they do so, they're going to bind to cytoplasmic or to nuclear receptors. In this case, the lipophilic messenger receptor complex will translocate to the nucleus, if it's not already there, and it will bind to a portion of the DNA. Here, it acts as a transcription factor to regulate gene expression. This mechanism takes hours to produce cellular responses because it requires transcription of the new messenger RNA and translation into new proteins. This contrasts sharply with the rapid response of hydrophilic messengers acting through membrane-bound receptors. Now, this transcription-dependent pathway is referred to as a genomic action. However, lipophilic messengers can also produce rapid effects through non-genomic mechanisms. Lipophilic messengers may also act through receptors on or near the cell membrane. These may activate many of the same mechanisms observed with hydrophilic messengers and account for the rapid responses elicited by lipophilic messengers. These are called non-genomic effects. Realize that not all cells respond to the same chemical messenger. This is a fundamental principle of signaling specificity. Whether a cell can respond depends on whether it expresses the appropriate receptor. Here we show two cells with distinct receptors that bind to specific ligands, triggering a cellular response in each. Notice that cells lacking complementary receptor cannot respond to the same ligand no matter how much is present. Receptor expression determines which cell can respond. There's another critical layer to specificity. The same ligand can produce completely different responses depending on which type of receptor is present. Here we have two cells, each expressing a unique receptor for the same chemical messenger. In one cell, the messenger-receptor interaction triggers contraction, while the same messenger interacting with a different receptor causes dilation. This means that to predict how a cell will respond, we need to know two things. We need to know what is the chemical messenger, and we also need to know what type of receptor does the target cell express. As we learn about the various chemical messengers throughout this course, pay close attention to the types of receptors they bind. The cellular response depends on receptor identity, not just the messenger itself.